I watched as Chingmei, to tease me, took my completed summer homework and used it as a mat. With a casual flick of her hand, she placed my finished summer homework under her things as a makeshift pad. When I found it, my homework had a gaping hole torn through it. It was smeared with oil, ruined beyond repair. Furious, I gave her the cold shoulder for the entire summer, until the first day I transferred to their school. I overheard a boy spreading rumors that Chingmei had a crush on him. A nearby classmate chimed in, agreeing enthusiastically. I knew Gu Qing'an was probably worried about distracting me from my studies. Waiting until graduation, Dasa would surely confess his feelings to her then. Hearing this, I let out a scoffing laugh. Their fantasies were truly absurd. Both of them stopped in their tracks. They turned, glaring at me with venom in their eyes. Song Jingnian, his brow furrowed, demanded to know why I was laughing. I looked at them calmly and spoke plainly. I laughed at their foolish infatuation. I laughed at their poor taste. I laughed at their daydreams. Seeing this, Song Jingnian was about to lose his temper, but his peripheral vision caught Gu Qing'an approaching from behind. He deliberately flashed a warm smile and said, "Classmate, if you have a problem with us, take it up with me directly. There's no need to badmouth Qing'an, is there? She's beautiful and excels in her studies. We didn't say anything wrong, did we? Even poetic words wouldn't do her justice. Gu Qing'an is the school's beauty. Are you the one who's crazy, or is he crazy himself? Besides, what good is being beautiful? Even if she chased me, I wouldn't care. If you like her, go ahead and pursue her." Hearing this, Song Jingnian turned to look at Gu Qing'an. "Qing'an, you heard him. I'm sorry, don't take it to heart. He's just saying that to provoke us." Song Jingnian was calculating, timing his words for when Gu Qing'an approached. He planned the moment perfectly, deliberately goading me into saying those words. Well, Gu Qing'an stood right behind me. She heard every word of our exchange clearly. On the first day of school, I'd already stirred up quite the scene. I wondered if my days ahead would bring any peace. Song Jingnian was secretly smug in his heart, but the outcome left him utterly shocked. Gu Qing'an didn't say a word. She glanced at me and walked straight into the classroom. I looked at Song Jingnian like he was a fool, then followed her into the classroom. Song Jingnian was so angry he gritted his teeth. He hadn't expected me to be in the same class, Class 3. What, that's it? The onlookers grumbled that the drama wasn't satisfying enough. They dispersed, their excitement fading. I saw my best friend Suke, noticing Gu Qing'an enter the classroom. She waved her hand in greeting. "Qing'an, why are you so late? Have you finished your summer homework? Let me copy it." Ever since Gu Qing'an entered the classroom, the room grew noticeably quieter. The girls' playful chatter softened, because Gu Qing'an despised noisy environments, while the boys focused intently on the beauty, their faces full of infatuation. I tapped on Gu Qing'an's desk. My tone carried a hint of impatience as I said, "Hey, can you move your desk forward a bit? This space is too cramped for me to sit." My voice wasn't loud, but the classroom was so quiet. It drew everyone's attention in an instant. Who's this guy? How dare he talk to Gu Qing'an like that? And he even tapped her desk? Gu Qing'an looked up at me. I stood over her, staring down intently. She met my gaze with sharp eyes of her own. We locked eyes like that for dozens of seconds. The crowd began to speculate, wondering how this guy would be put in his place. Because Gu Qing'an disliked talking to boys, no matter how handsome they were, let alone one whose words carried a spark of hostility. But to everyone's surprise, Gu Qing'an stood up. She moved her desk forward a good distance. Then I sat down calmly, as if nothing had happened. A grand scene ended before it could truly begin. The crowd watched, their faces full of confusion. It was the first time I'd seen Gu laugh Flower stay silent like a mute. He didn't even get angry. Why was he listening so obediently to the new guy? Such an amusing piece of gossip. Of course, it had to be shared with the entire school. Soon enough, the school's bulletin board had a hot new post. Breaking news! The handsome transfer student from Class 3, Grade 12, had just arrived. and already clashed with the campus bell. I had just found my seat and sat down in the classroom when it all happened. My new deskmate leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Sorry about this. Jang Haochi didn't have time to explain it to you." That seat beside me was the only one left in the class. The weird part is, Gu Kingen said the front seats were too small, that his 2-meter-long legs couldn't fit. So he kept pushing the desk backward, which meant no one ever sat beside me. Although what Guo Ya said wasn't wrong, it wasn't the full truth either. Gu Kingen did have long legs. He didn't like being cramped up next to people, but more importantly, he didn't like having someone sitting in front of him. Because some people always found excuses to turn around and stare at him. It annoyed him. I slowly took a third practice book from my backpack, holding it as I gave Guo Ya a calm smile. "It's fine, Guo Ya." She wouldn't say anything more. "What did you just say, Wenyin?" I wondered if I had heard her wrong. Why did Zhang Haochi seem so familiar with Gu Kingen? I shook my head, though I didn't say anything out loud. In my mind, I was already thinking, "Alright then, Gu Kingen. Didn't expect you to be such a big deal at this school. But sorry. Now that I'm here, you're not going to stay on top for long. You've never beaten me once growing up. Are you really thinking of rebelling again?" I thought to myself with a quiet laugh. As the chatter in class rose and fell, old Zhang, our homeroom teacher, stepped up to the podium. "Look, old Zhang's here." The classroom quickly fell silent. He hung a sign beside the blackboard. It read, 283 days until the college entrance exam. Then he cleared his throat, scanned the room, and finally landed his gaze on the new face in class. He raised his hand, pointing at the new male student beside me. "Please stand up and introduce yourself." I had only been in the classroom for less than an hour, and I was already drawing attention. Everyone was full of curiosity about me. I stood up abruptly, but couldn't fully straighten my leg. The space between desks was still too cramped. "Hello everyone, my name is Zhang Haoji. I transferred here from experimental high school. I hope we can all improve together in the days ahead." Some observant classmates noticed. While I was speaking, Gu Kingen quietly slid his chair a little forward. By the time I finished speaking, he had taken back his usual space, and even claimed a bit extra. "Not bad at all. Very good. Jiang's grades are quite impressive. You should all help each other as classmates." Old Jiang raised his hand with a smile, signaling for me to sit down. I opened my mouth awkwardly and said, "Teacher, what is it? Do you still have something to say?" Clutching my stomach, I looked uneasy. "I'd like to go to the restroom." Some of the classmates, with an easy laugh, already burst into giggles. Old Zhang waved his hand go quickly. When I returned to the classroom, Old Zhang had already started the lesson. The class passed in a blur until the bell rang. I kept my hand over my stomach and lay lifelessly on the desk. "Zhang Haoji, are you alright? Want me to take you to the infirmary?" Wenyan gently touched my back with concern. I forced out a weak smile. "I'm fine, just ate something bad last night." Gu Kingen had just gotten up from his seat and glanced over in this direction. He walked out of the classroom silently with his water cup in hand. Before long, he came back, holding a box of medicine and a cup of hot water. Then, under the gaze of the entire class, he placed both items on my desk. Sukik rubbed her eyes. "No way, did I see that right? Kingen, you actually let him use your cup, and you even bought him medicine." Sukik reached out to touch Kingen's forehead with concern. She tilted her head in confusion. "No fever at all. Gu Kingen, something's wrong with you. You're definitely hiding something." Gu Kingen swatted Sukek's hand away and said, "Stop talking nonsense." For a moment, the classroom exploded with noise again. Didn't Gu Kingen have a cleanliness obsession? Wasn't no physical contact between boys and girls his catchphrase? Wasn't that his mantra? Gu La Flower actually taking care of someone. Just who is this new guy anyway? And Gu La Flower, not only did he not get mad, He even showed concern for him. What's so strange about that? Gu Qing'an has always been kind by nature. What's wrong with caring for a new classmate? That's what Song Jinian said with her mouth. But in her heart, jealousy was already overflowing. She had secretly liked Gu Qing'an for so many years, worked hard for so many years, and still couldn't melt the iceberg. Yet now it was starting to thaw. The fire of jealousy burned fiercely inside her. The two people in question seemed completely unconcerned by the noise around them. Gu Qing'an lay down on the desk and went to sleep. And I unscrewed the cup lid, blowing gently, until the water wasn't too hot, then gulped it down in big sips. At this point, I didn't feel particularly grateful to Gu Qing'an. After all, the one who made me sick in the first place. It was him. He insisted on dumping 3 seasoning packets into the spicy noodles, and lied to me saying he only used 1. It was so spicy my tongue went numb. And just my luck, there was no water left at home. I had to cool down with ice soda. Eating like that, even Gu Qing'an should have suffered. Yet somehow he was totally fine now. I had to admit I was impressed. Of course, that wasn't the main reason for the Cold War that had lasted from last night until now. The real reason came during dinner, when Gu Qing'an casually used my summer homework as a placemat, swearing it wouldn't get damaged. But by the end of the meal, my homework was tattered beyond recognition. Its surface smeared with greasy stains. I was furious. I scolded Gu Qing'an for being irresponsible. But Gu Qing'an thought I was overreacting. He said a student not turning in homework wasn't a big deal. We kept bickering until it turned into a real fight. The argument only ended when Gu Qing'an gave me his own summer homework as compensation. And then began the long silent treatment. That's why we didn't come to school together today. And why? We hadn't spoken a word all morning. Cold War or not, the concern was still there when it mattered. Ever since we were kids, no matter how badly we fought, Gu Qing'an was usually the first to back down, whether he could tolerate my indifference or not. Just the nagging from my mom alone was enough to make his ears grow calluses. You're a girl. A girl should be more reserved. What kind of girl acts all wild like you? Gu Qing'an could recite those lines word for word. Wenyan nearly dropped her jaw at what she just witnessed. She couldn't hold back and pulled me aside with gossip in her eyes. John Haoji, are you and Gu Qing'an close or something? What exactly is your relationship? We're not close. Just thinking about how Gu Qing'an still hadn't apologized made me furious again. All those years of sharing ice cream might as well have gone to the dogs. I don't even know him. No way. With how well I know Gu Qing'an. If you two aren't close, then I'll wash my hair while doing a handstand. Su also joined the group chat. He had been classmates with Gu Qing'an for all 3 years of middle school, and we shared the same desk for 2 years in high school. I had never seen Qing'an act so warmly toward anyone before. When was this ever going to end? Gu Qing'an still couldn't fall asleep. He turned over and kicked my desk a few times. Zhang Haoji, are you ashamed of knowing me or something? I shot him a cold glare. Big head Gu, stop kicking my desk. This time, my voice wasn't quiet. The words big head Gu echoed through the classroom, and the room stayed in stunned silence for quite a while. Are you satisfied now? Now not only does everyone know we know each other, they also know your nickname. I tilted my chin at him with a smirk in front of the new class. Gu Qing'an had been really skinny as a kid, so his head looked disproportionately big. That's why I gave him so many nicknames. Even now, when he's grown up into someone stunningly attractive, and his face is nicely proportioned, I still prefer to call him that. Ha ha ha, big head Gu. Even our school beauty Gu has a nickname. This transfer student's got guts. Extra. Our school beauty Gu has a nickname. Big head Gu caught on quickly among the students. Knock, it was a boy from another class. He suddenly showed up at our classroom door and knocked lightly on the door. Mr. Zhang asked your class monitor to collect the summer homework. Running errands for class 3 had always been a task reserved for the strongest boys from other classes. The only reason I volunteered for this was to use it as an excuse to steal one more glance at Gu Qing'an. Song Jinian stood up at once. He turned to the boy at the door and said, "Got it. Thanks, classmate." Just being in the same class as Gu Qing'an was already something that made him proud. Being the class monitor on top of that only fed his ego further. A low grumbling spread through the classroom. So Mr. Zhang hadn't forgotten after all. Turns out we still had to turn it in. Song Jinian started collecting from the round next to him. By the time he got to Gu Qing'an, he already had a thick stack. He placed the pile of homework he was carrying onto Gu Qing'an's desk, then shook out his hands, trying to show how tired he was. He took Su Kek's homework and grinned as he turned to Gu Qing'an. "Gu Qing'an, where's your summer homework?" "Didn't bring it," Gu Qing'an replied without even lifting his head. His tone was sharp and impatient. Song Jinian swallowed the words that were about to come out. He had to always keep up his image in front of Gu Qing'an. "Alright then, just remember to bring it tomorrow." After getting cold-shouldered by Gu Qing'an, Song Jinian naturally turned to vent his frustration on me. He deliberately bumped into my desk. "Sorry about that. These assignments are really heavy, new classmate. I didn't mean to hit you," Song Jinian said with an innocent face. "No worries," I waved it off generously. Who was I, Zhang Haoqi, the legendary drama king within 10 miles? I took out a notebook from my backpack. To be exact, it was Gu Qing'an's summer homework. I flipped through my own a bit in front of him on purpose. Here, the handwriting was exactly like Gu Qing'an's. I knew it better than anyone. He used to secretly copy his father's writing over and over, back when he was collecting assignments, just to get the strokes perfect. "What's the matter, monitor? Any issue with it?" I stared at Song Jinian with a challenge in my eyes as his face froze. "So what if I played tricks? It wasn't like others couldn't do it too." "It's nothing, the handwriting just looks a bit familiar." Song Jinian forced a stiff smile, though his eyes flickered with doubt. Was this really Gu Qing'an's homework? Or did someone else write it for him? His head was spinning with questions, but he couldn't ask any of them, partly because he didn't want to hear the truth, but mostly because he was afraid others would find out. After all, in everyone's eyes before, he had always been the only one. Who could be a match for Gu Qing'an? Song Jinian walked away with his head hung low. Seeing that, Guo Ya threw an arm around my neck. "How did you even pull that off?" He had long been fed up with how Song Jinian strutted around like he owned the place, always acting superior just because he had 3 more years of middle school with Gu Qing'an than the rest of us. He never shut up about how close they supposedly were. But if you asked me, Gu Qing'an couldn't care less about him. There's only so much a man can tolerate, and I was done tolerating. I turned my head, grinning as I gave Guo Ya a triumphant look. There was a fleeting smile on Gu Qing'an's face, so faint you might miss it if you blinked, but he quickly wiped it away, then kicked my chair a few more times. "Can you just shut up already?" That whole day, students from other classes kept showing up at the doorway of class 3, peeking in to get a glimpse of me. Some came just to see Gu Qing'an, but a good chunk were clearly here for us. After all, it was the transfer student's first day, and I'd already made it onto the school forum. Apparently, this had never happened since the founding of our school. So, does this count as my overnight fame? Classmate, standing outside another classroom like that, gets in the way of people coming in and out. Gu Qing'an said coolly to a girl nearby. It was rare, the school beauty Gu actually initiating a conversation for once. Why would he do that? Of course, it was because what bothered him more than being stared at himself was me being the one stared at. The last period was self-study, and there wasn't much homework assigned on the first day. Gu Qing'an finished everything 10 minutes before the bell. He packed up his bag, glanced at the clock at the front of the room, then started kicking my chair again, Jong Haochi, hurry up and pack your things. School's about to end. I held back my irritation and didn't turn around, but Gu Kingin kept kicking. Are you deaf? Don't want to walk home with me or what? Still mad, huh? Why are you so touchy? Fine, I'll apologize. Does that work for you? It's all my fault, okay? The whole school thought Gu Kingin was the type who barely spoke a word. But only I knew how annoyingly chatty he could be. A whole day without talking to me was already his limit. Alright, I got it. I turned and shot Gu Kingin a deadly glare. He looked at me, then said, do you have a question you don't know how to solve? Just ask me if you're stuck. I don't mind sacrificing my precious time to help you out. His words left me speechless. Gu Kingin, are you mentally defective or what? Can you stop being so loud? Just shut up. I finally lost it and shouted at Gu Kingin at the top of my lungs. Maybe it was thanks to the medicine he gave me that my energy had come back. My voice had never been stronger. The shout startled every student nearby. One by one, curious heads snapped around to stare at us. Only then did I realize what I had just done. I bowed my head and apologized politely in every direction. Liu Yu thought to himself, there's no way Gu Kingin would fall for Zhang Haochi. And to think I actually saw him as a rival. Suddenly I felt pretty foolish. But what he forgot was the reason I'd snapped at Gu Kingin in the first place. It was because he just wouldn't shut up. And the reason he was normally so quiet was because he only had eyes for me. He'd gotten all worked up over me again, but instead of getting angry, Gu Kingin actually stuck out his tongue at me and made a silly face. I rolled my eyes right back at him, which officially ended our Cold War. After a whole day of emotional chaos, the class had gotten used to our antics, and this latest scene of ours didn't even faze them anymore. They watched the show, then quietly went back to what they were doing. If you ask me, Gu Kingin definitely likes Zhang Haochi. Seriously, anyone with eyes can see it. Shh, don't let that phony hear you. What are you scared of if he does? Who told him to be so arrogant all the time? He totally lost this time, huh? Saying don't let that phony hear it. But they clearly wanted him to hear it. Liu Yuan quietly clenched his fists. His fingertips had turned white from the pressure. Finally, the dismissal bell rang. Students chirped and chattered as they poured out of the classroom. Sukik slung on her backpack and asked Gu Kingin, what are you doing later? Going to paint? Gu Kingin pointed at me and said, ask him, seriously? You're still going home with him after school? Sukik was so agitated her voice cracked. Also, can you stop speaking 2 words at a time to me? Gu Kingin shook his head and said, no. My dad's picking me up. If you want to paint, go paint by yourself. I'm going home first. I turned and said to Gu Kingin, then patted Guo Ya on the shoulder. Guo Ya, let's walk together. Then I'm not going either, he said. We can paint another day. Gu Kingin said that, then ran up and followed us. Sukik trailed behind our little group, shouting, Zhang Haochi, what is going on today? Gu Kingin, can't you act a little more reserved, like a school beauty should? Guo and I walked toward the school gate. Gu Kingin and Sukik followed behind. Wherever there are pretty boys and girls, there's always a scene. And sure enough, this scenery soon stirred up a commotion. Hi, classmate Zhang. My name is Yang Shinu. I'm from class 9 and I like you. Will you be my boyfriend? Gasps echoed around from nearby students. A pretty girl walked over and greeted me. I'd been confessed to before, but usually at least I'd seen the person before it happened. Being confessed to by a total stranger was kind of awkward. Before I could say anything, a cold voice rang out behind me. Gu Kingin stepped up. You say you like Zhang Haochi when you've never even seen his real face properly. And you call that like? Isn't your like a bit too cheap? Gu Kingin, mind your own business, okay? I'm talking to Zhang Haochi, not you. Yang Shinu was kind of famous too. one of the few female campus queens at our school. Gu Kingun yanked my backpack, dragging me to stand next to him. Who says it's none of my business? Anything related to Zhang Haoqi is my business. What a joke! You think just because people call you a school heartthrob, that gives you the right to run wild? Yang Shinyu looked at me. Zhang Haoqi, can we be boyfriend and girlfriend? Gu Kingun raised his voice. Didn't you hear what I just said? He rarely spoke with that much emotion. Gu Kingun, let's go. I tugged on his sleeve. And that Yang Shinyu girl. I'll remember you. But I have to go home now. Bye. Before she could yank me back again, I pulled Gu Kingun with me, and we walked past all the gawking eyes toward the school gate. Gu Kingun, Zhang Haoqi. Across the road, a black business car honked twice and called to us. That was my dad, Zhang Yunchuan. In front of everyone, Gu Kingun got in the same car as me. How was school today, Kingun? Didn't get into trouble, right? Nope, Zhang Haoqi's super popular at school. Just now someone even wanted to be friends with him. Right? Gu Kingun deliberately spoke in a sarcastic tone. No trouble, huh? Zhang Yunchuan smiled in satisfaction. Our families were close friends, and both sets of parents really liked us. They'd even once talked in private about whether we might become in-laws someday. But that was when we were very little. The car pulled into the underground parking lot of a high-end neighborhood, and Gu Kingun and I rode all the way together. The moment Neo Now came through the door, I caught the rich aroma of food in the air. My mom's cooking was always delicious. Gu Kingun often said the meals at his place tasted terrible, so he'd frequently come over to my house to mooch off dinner. My mom picked up some food with her chopsticks and placed it into Gu Kingun's bowl with a motherly smile. Eat more, Kingun. Soon his bowl was piled high like a little mountain, and my mom kept adding more, fussing over how thin he looked. Thank you, Auntie. I'm eating plenty already. It's just that I digest quickly. Exactly, he already finished 2 bowls. I blurted it out without thinking, like I always do. You eat a few bites at our place, and look how stingy you get with your teeth. Under the table, Kingun kicked me in the leg. His eyes clearly told me he wasn't happy. After dinner, the two of us sat in my room doing homework. Well, to be accurate, I was doing homework. Kingun was sitting beside me stirring up trouble. He'd already finished all of his assignments at school. He didn't even bring his backpack home. With a pen clenched in my mouth, I stared at a tough physics problem meant for the protagonist. After thinking for a bit, I started scribbling furiously, then crossed it all out and began again. My frustration steadily mounting. You messed up the formula, didn't you? Gu Kingun leaned over and only needed one glance to spot where I'd gone wrong. So that's what it was. I felt so humiliated I could have died right there. All those results, and it was just a wrong formula. KTSK. Why are you still so sloppy and careless? If you keep this up, how are you ever going to surpass me? For all 3 years of high school, Gu Kingun had always ranked in the top 3. Even though I did pretty well myself, it always felt like he was the child other parents dreamed of. Mine were always urging me to learn from him. But this time, I was determined. We were both named Zhuo Jing, and we'd long agreed that whoever did better in this monthly exam would get to make the other their personal errand boy for a whole month. Just wait, Gu Kingun. This time I'm going to trample you underfoot in the exam. I growled those words through clenched teeth. The next morning, as soon as I opened the door, I saw him standing there waiting for me. Gu Kingun's family lived right across the hall from mine, so every morning, we rode our bikes to school together. The cheery jingling of our bike bells filled the road. At the corner by the school gate, we ran into Su Kik. From a distance, she waved excitedly at us. Wu Jiang, how could you just snatch my Kingun away like that? Seeing the way we stuck so close together, Su Kik couldn't help but get a little jealous. I teased her. It's been 17 years. This guy's been haunting me like a ghost for 17 years. I beg you, please take him off my hands. Then it hit me. So it was Gu Jingan. The one with the photo on the middle school meal card, that was you. Ha ha ha, I've heard so much about you. Looks like we need to get properly introduced again. Oh, not at all. I've heard quite a bit about you too, the famous Beauty Sue. The two of them seem to hit it off surprisingly well. Long-lost friends reunited at last. Gu King unlocked his bike and wedged himself between the two. Come on, let's go. We're going to be late. A beautiful day began with our ride through Chengdu. I was trying my best to memorize English vocabulary when the homeroom teacher suddenly walked in and tapped the blackboard. Heads up, everyone. I've got an announcement to make. Next week we'll be having a diagnostic exam. The scope includes everything you've learned so far. And the format will be exactly like the college entrance exam. I hope you all take it seriously. Why are we having a test right at the start of the semester? I'm not even ready yet. So basically there's no scope at all. The classroom buzzed with protests and complaints. Alright, that's enough. Get back to whatever you were doing. After saying that, old Zhang left the classroom. Our agreed-upon showdown had arrived sooner than expected. Gu King and I'm going to beat you this time for sure. I made a silent vow to myself deep in my heart. When the break came, they asked if I was going to the bathroom. Boys always liked to head to the restroom in groups between classes, and I was no exception, usually tagging along. But this time I waved them off without even lifting my head and said I wasn't going. I could still cram a few more vocabulary words in during this moment. Goji pulled a carton of milk from his bag, poked a straw in and pushed it toward me, saying I was working so hard. Here, have some milk. It might help fuel that brain of yours. I took a sip from the carton, then kept muttering as I went back to memorizing words. Gu King turned to look at me and said my name with exaggerated slowness. Last-minute cramming won't save you. Just give up already. Losing to me isn't shameful. I scribbled a few words down on a piece of paper, crunched it into a ball, took a quick step forward, and launched it in a beautiful arc that landed right on Gu Kingan's desk. He opened it up and spread it flat. The 4 bold characters read, "Get lost. Stop bothering me and eat your food. You insulted me again." We agreed that whoever scored lower would be the other's lackey for a whole month. Hardworking and uncomplaining. No regrets, no complaints. You better stick to your word. Don't you dare cry when you lose. Just as he said that, Gu Kingan suddenly thought of something mischievous. He covered his mouth and chuckled, then sketched a pig's head on that same paper and slyly stuck it on my back. Sukik watched the whole sequence and shook her head helplessly. Gu Kingan, I never realized you were this childish before. He turned around, and his face was back to its usual cool, aloof look. Like that guy from just now wasn't him at all. You don't understand, you're not Gu Kingan. Sukik gripped both his shoulders and shook him. Who are you really? Give me back my real Kingan. Sukik, are you trying to start a rebellion? Don't forget she's a black belt in Taekwondo. Gu Kingan grabbed her wrist, twisted her arm behind her back and pinned it there. Alright. I was wrong, okay? Let go. Sukik pounded the desk, begging for mercy. Just then, the classroom door opened. A young, very stylishly dressed woman stepped in, holding a thick stack of papers in her arms. Is that the new teacher? She's so beautiful. At the front of the room, the teacher heard the quiet murmurs from below and smiled as she said, "Hello, everyone. I'm your 12th grade math teacher. My surname is Yang." To better understand where everyone stands, before we officially start the lesson, let's do a little quiz. Ms. Yang quickly divided the papers into 4 stacks and handed them to the front rows to pass back. Beautiful women really do come with all kinds of flair. We're starting off with a test already. Sukik whispered, I hate this kind of sneak attack. There's no need for me to repeat the exam rules, right? Once you're done, just hand it in directly. Ms. Yang paced slowly down the aisles, glancing over the students' papers as she walked, frowning here and shaking her head, then smiling and nodding in satisfaction over there. The first to turn in his test was Song Jinlian. He always had to be first when it came to showing off, and he made sure of it every time. Goji was the second to finish. I called out to him, asking if he could hand mine in too. Just as he was getting up, Gu Qing'an gave his chair a nudge. Hey, would you mind handing in mine and Kex as well? Goji seemed a little surprised. If he remembered right, this was the first time Gu Qing'an had spoken to him unprompted. Sure, Goji nodded and collected the 3 test papers before heading up. Since the test was all multiple choice, it was quick to grade. Ms. Yang's pen flew across the papers with rapid strokes, and she finished grading everything before class ended. When she got to mine, she announced who had scored the highest. So who's going to be my class rep? In today's test, one student actually scored a perfect grade. Zhang Heiozi, from now on, you'll be the math class representative. That's alright, isn't it? I nodded. No problem, teacher. Math was my strong suit. Back at my old school, I was always the math rep too. And there was another student who only got one question wrong. Gu Qing'an. If Zhang Hao ever gets too busy, you'll help him out, won't you? Gu Qing'an gave a small nod. Yes, teacher. The previous class rep was a chubby boy. He looked a little embarrassed to be replaced so suddenly, but since he'd been outperformed, he accepted it with surprising grace. After all, collecting homework was a thankless and exhausting job, not exactly something to fight over. Xiao Hao, how are you this good? Help me with my math more from now on, alright. When class ended, Su Kik was staring at me with eyes full of admiration. As long as I don't have to help you, we're good. Gu Qing'an tossed a vocabulary book at her. Just memorize more words. Su Kik gritted her teeth. Thanks a lot. Then muttered to herself, good grief. Look at Gu Qing'an and his damned possessiveness. 2 girls were getting water when one of them casually said, I used to think Zhang Hao was just a pretty face. Didn't expect him to be so good at studying too. Better not say that in front of Song Jinlian. He'd be really upset. Yeah, I know. These days, Song Jinlian and I were like fire and water. Because of all those posts on the campus forum yesterday, he had become the school's biggest laughingstock. Finally, the morning classes ended, and the students rushed madly toward the cafeteria. If you're not passionate about eating, there's something wrong with your mindset. By the time Goji and I got there, a long line had already formed in front of us. My stomach grumbled as I rubbed it, standing on my toes to try and see what was being served. No idea if there'd be anything good left when it was our turn. It was only my first time eating at the school cafeteria, and I thought the food was actually pretty good. Unlike Goji, who'd been eating it for 2 years, and already lost all interest. Wow, there's braised pork today, and sweet and sour fish. That's my favorite. My eyes were glued to the lunch trays and passing students' hands, staring like I could will the food onto my plate. Wipe your drool, will you? Goji was probably trying hard not to laugh at me. Man can't live without food. No food, no focus. Eat well to study well. Zhang Heiozi. Someone near the front of the line waved at me. Doesn't look like someone from our class. I've never been good at remembering faces. And even after a whole day, I hadn't matched every classmate's name with their face. Goji leaned in and whispered, That's Yang Shenyu. Right, now I remembered. What does she want from me? I pretended I hadn't seen her. But Yang Shenyu kept waving harder. Why don't you come over here? You're too far back in line. All the good food will be gone by the time you get there. The girl standing with her started teasing again. Yang Shenyu, why are you being so nice to Zhang Hao? I quickly waved them off. Forget it. Cutting the line isn't right. And besides, we said we wouldn't trouble you. After she said that, I turned and pretended to discuss a question with Goji. ignoring Young Shinu completely. Cutting in line just felt wrong, and I really didn't want to get entangled with her. Still, we were nearly at the very end. By the time we reached the food counter, only a few scattered dishes were left. All my favorites had long been wiped clean. Well, at least having something to eat was better than nothing at all. Goji and I carried our trays, wandering through the cafeteria searching for seats. Since only the senior class had started the term, the school had only opened half the dining hall. Almost every seat was already taken. Jang Haeozi, over here, there's a spot. Not far off, Sukik was waving eagerly at us. At the whole table, only she and Gu Kingen were sitting there. Come on, Goji, let's sit over there. I headed over first, and Goji had no choice but to follow. As soon as I sat down, I asked, "Why is everyone crammed together elsewhere and avoiding your table?" Sukik complained, probably because they lost their appetite. His aura exploded. Just look at Gu Kingen's face, cold as ice. Who could eat with that sitting next to them? I nodded in agreement. It was only after coming to Yizhong that I realized the Gu Kingen at school was so different from the one I knew. Hey, Gu Kingen, don't you not eat fish? Why'd you get sweet and sour fish? I spotted the dish on his tray, and my eyes instantly lit up. Gu Kingen answered mildly, "My mom always says fish is good for the eyes, but I took a bite and couldn't swallow it. You like it, so go ahead and eat it." Without hesitation, I scooped all the sweet and sour fish from his tray onto mine. Then I won't be shy about it. I popped a piece in my mouth and said, "How can you not like something this delicious? What a waste of good food." Gu Kingen really didn't like fish. He never ate it, even as a kid, but he knew I loved it. So when he saw it was almost gone, he'd made sure to get some for me, knowing I might miss out. But the aloof Gu Kingen would never admit that. Sukik set down her drink and said to Goji, "Come on, Goji, say something too." Goji had transferred here in the first semester of junior year from another city. She was naturally a bit shy and had no deskmate, so she mostly kept to herself. Even though I'd been sitting behind Sukik and Gu Kingen all this time, it had always been Sukik who started conversations with me, and I'd only reply occasionally. I knew Goji and Gu Kingen were even less familiar. Goji smiled a little shyly. I don't really know what to say. I grinned and gave her shoulder a friendly pat. "Goji, you're the first real friend I've made at this school. I'm seriously lucky." Goji smiled back and said, "I'm the lucky one, meeting a friend like you. You two done buttering each other up?" Gu Kingen set his chopsticks down, then looked earnestly at Goji and said, "Let me warn you, based on my entire life's experience, being friends with Jang Haeozi is seriously high risk. See this scar on my hand?" Gu Kingen pointed to a faint mark on his right hand. That was Jang Haeozi's doing. You know why? Back in 8th grade, there was a period when my foot swelled up like a pig's trotter. I couldn't fit into shoes, so I had to hop around on one leg in slippers. Gu Kingen turned slowly to look at Sukik, because Jang Haeozi insisted I learn to ride a bike and I fell. And that's just one example. There's plenty more, so just be careful. After that, he lowered his head and resumed eating. I listened to his dramatic complaints and chuckled. "Come on, I said I was sorry. It's not like I did it on purpose. And besides, how long ago was that? You still remember it so clearly." "So Jang Haeozi, you and Gu Kingen have known each other since you were kids." Goji finally caught on. Even as Gu Kingen kept chewing in silence, there was even a hint of pride in his voice, as if he were saying that ever since we were kids, Jang Haeozi had always been part of his world. I nodded proudly and said, "That's right. He and I have known each other since we were little, and since then, I've always been the boss. When I saw the way Gu Kingan's face was slowly darkening, I suddenly felt a little nervous. We've been buddies since way back. Don't worry, Goji, you're my buddy now too. Gu Kingan shot me a look and muttered, have some shame. So shameless it's impressive. Sukik started counting on her fingers. Let me get this straight. I'm Gu Kingan's bestie, and Gu Kingan is Jang Heozi's best buddy. So doesn't that make me Jang Heozi's best buddy too? Exactly, I nodded. Sukik kept counting with her fingers. Jang Heozi is friends with Goji, and I'm friends with Jang Heozi. So am I also friends with Goji? Oh, come on, enough with that. I cut her off. From now on, the four of us are all best buddies. We'll share fortune and endure hardship together. Alright then, let's toast with our drinks. Cheers to that. Goji joined in laughing. And thus, the four academic aces of Class 3, Grade 12 were born. Everyone experiences time differently. To me, this past week flew by. Commuting to school with Gu Kingan every day was a lot more fun than going alone like I used to. Before I knew it, Friday had come, and I was slowly getting used to life at Yizhong. Today the weather was unusually stuffy. A few aging ceiling fans spun furiously overhead, but they didn't do much to help. The weekend was just around the corner. And during the self-study session that afternoon, the students were already mentally halfway out the door, their thoughts flying who knows where. During break, Goji and I had just gotten back from the restroom when we saw Zhao Pengfei, the most excitable guy in class, writing a few lines on the blackboard. I read the title aloud. Class 3, Grade 12 Annual Superlatives. The categories were all over the place. Most handsome guy in class, prettiest girl in class, nicest personality, cuttest person, funniest person, and more. So every class really does love these weird little awards. After finishing the list, Zhao Pengfei tossed the chalk back into the box, then turned to the class and said, everyone feel free to join in. Just write the name of the person you want on a slip of paper and hand it up to the podium. We'll tally things up during next break. Didn't we already do this once before? Why are we doing it again? Who knows? Maybe it's because Jang Heozi transferred in, and we need a new class heartthrob. Whatever, it's just for fun. Sukik leaned over to ask Gu Kingan. Gu Kingan, what do you think? Without even looking up, he replied, no idea. Not interested. Sukik kept going, but think about it. If I become the class belle, and you're already the school prince, wouldn't that make us the perfect pair? Gu Kingan shot her a sideways glance and said, so lame. Vote if you want. I'm not taking part. With that, he stood up and walked out through the back door. Goji tore a piece of scrap paper in half. Jang Heozi, who are you voting for? And handed me one half. I shook my head, a bit troubled. I don't really know anyone yet. Goji patted me on the shoulder. It's fine, just pick randomly. Or pick the same as me. For class belle, it has to be Gu Kingan. And for class heartthrob, that's obviously you. Without hesitating, Goji wrote my full name under class heartthrob. As I wrote, I muttered, voting for myself feels kind of shameless. But sure, I'll vote for you as class heartthrob then. I folded the paper in half, then in half again after finishing writing on it. Then I placed it on the teacher's desk along with the holiday one. The commotion stirred by this little vote filled the classroom, and the liveliness gradually faded. Only when the class bell rang did the room slowly return to a calm quiet. 45 minutes was just enough to finish a math test. I closed mine right as the bell for the end of class rang. At that moment, Zhao Pengfei walked up to the podium. He started unfolding the slips of paper one by one. He shouted that the exciting moment had arrived, and joked that he was about to start singing and dancing. He read each name aloud and wrote it on the blackboard, then made tally marks next to them. After a round of counting, Gu Kingan won the class flower title again with a high vote count. Guo yeah won the best temper title by a margin of 3 votes, was proudly announced. Each other category also had its own winner. Only the class heartthrob vote ended up being complicated. Song Jingmian had 20 votes. Su Kun for votes, and I also had 20 votes. Out of 45 total. One person hadn't voted yet. Everyone looked at each other, trying to figure out who it was. Dahai and Guo Ya leaned close to me and whispered, Zhang Haoji, if you ask me, you've already won. Song Jingmian definitely voted for himself. I shrugged slightly. It didn't matter to me. I never really cared about being chosen. This title never meant much to me anyway. But Song Jingmian didn't see it that way. He had been the class heartthrob. Losing that many supporters all at once left Song Jingmian's face expressionless. But inside, he was cursing the 20 people for having no taste. Meanwhile, Su-kik pushed Gu Qing'an, who was sleeping face down on his desk. She called out, Gu Qing'an, wake up! Did you forget to vote? Gu Qing'an was never interested in things like this. And he had been sleeping deeply. He was clearly irritated at being woken up so suddenly. What do you want? I said I don't care about this stuff. Su-kik tugged at his arm again. Everything else already has a result. Only the class heartthrob hasn't been decided. Song Jingmian and Zhang Haoqi are tied. Your vote is the decider, Gu Qing'an. Come on, just cast your vote. Otherwise, all our efforts will be for nothing. Everyone started chiming in to persuade him. Just cast a vote, come on. Gu Qing'an was still half asleep. He squinted at the blackboard. Su-kik gave him a look and said in a teasing tone, everything else is settled. Only the class heartthrob remains. What a hassle, Gu Qing'an muttered. Then stood up from his seat. He walked to the podium under everyone's gaze and drew a firm tally mark under my name. Said, done now, right. Then put down the chalk and left the classroom without another word. Gu Qing'an really was thorough from start to finish. He never once voted for Song Jingmian. Do we have a new class heartthrob? Just like that. Thanks to the deciding vote from Gu Qing'an, I was successfully chosen as the new class heartthrob of Class 3, Grade 12. Song Jingmian suddenly shot up from his seat and stormed out of the classroom. He blocked his returning mother Hanzi at the door and asked Gu Qing'an, why are you always siding with that Zhang Haoqi? What do I lack compared to Zhang Haoqi? Gu Qing'an's face was expressionless and coldly replied, you and Zhang Haoqi aren't even in the same league, leaving Song Jingmian standing there awkwardly on his own. After that amusing break, everyone's study motivation seemed to lift a bit, and we made it through the rest of the day. While walking toward the school gate, Su-kik asked the other 3, Gu Qing'an, Haoqi, over the weekend, do you all have plans? If not, should we study together? I was the first to respond, sure, I'm free. And Gu Qing'an is free too. Then it's settled. No one will be home at my place this weekend. You all come study at my house. Su-kik said excitedly, great. Day. While walking toward the school gate, Su-kik asked the other 3, Gu Qing'an, Haoqi, over the weekend, do you all have plans? If not, should we study together? I was the first to respond, sure, I'm free. And Gu Qing'an is free too. Then it's settled. No one will be home at my place this weekend. You all come study at my house. Su-kik said excitedly, great. I haven't been to your house yet, Zhang Haoqi. Gu Qing'an stepped aside to distance himself from us. He was clearly drawing a line between him and the rest of us. I never said I was going. Su-kik immediately got anxious when she heard that. She shook his shoulder and whined sweetly, and, come on, Qing'an, you have to come. If you don't, I'll be the only girl there. And that just wouldn't be right. Me and Guo Ya both acted like we were disgusted. We instantly sprang away from her, putting a solid meter of distance between us and her. But I don't even need to review. Gu Qing'an had this ability to speak in the calmest tone. and still deliver the deadliest blow without ever raising his voice. These two are anything but normal. I shook my head in exasperation. It seemed that when things really came down to it, only I could step up and fix the situation. Come on, this is easy. If the great school beauty refuses to associate with us, then our 4-person gang is officially disbanded. We'll just find another top-tier goddess to replace Gu Kingen and start a brand new squad. I nudged Guo Ya, grinning with my signature love-struck expression. There are plenty of pretty academic stars to choose from anyway. But before I even finished, I caught sight of Gu Kingen in the corner of my eye, and his expression was growing more and more murderous. Guo Ya was just about to echo my words, but ended up swallowing them entirely. Try it and I'll go straight to Uncle Zhang and tell him you've been messing around with girls at school. Then Gu Kingen turned to the others and said 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Don't be late, leaving only that sentence behind. Gu Kingen kept walking toward the bus stop with me in tow without even looking back. Guo Ya sighed. Wow, school flower goose possessiveness is off the charts. He watched our backs as we walked away, clearly stunned. Sukik, clueless as ever, leaned in close, lowered her voice and said, Guo, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Don't be late. Guo Ya turned her head and smiled with a nod. All right then, she said, before crossing the street. Gu Kingen didn't let go of me until we got to the bus stop. We're taking the bus today. My father only picked us up the first day after school. Since then, he left early and came home late every day. Even catching a glimpse of him became rare. So he transferred me to this school, just so I could go to and from school with Gu Kingen. Taking the bus is fine, I guess. But why grab my hand like that? I had no idea what was going through his head. It felt like Gu Kingen was a little angry, and for some reason, I couldn't bring myself to fight back. All I could do was mumble quietly to myself. When we got back to our neighborhood, the landscaping in the complex was beautiful. Winding paths lined with all kinds of trees and flowers. Why do you keep staring at me? Gu Kingen had already noticed with his peripheral vision that I kept turning back to look at him every few steps. It's nothing, I said, just surprised at how popular you are at school. How did I never notice you were this pretty before? As I spoke, he jabbed my forehead hard. You're just now realizing that. Only a fool like you would complain every day about having a drop-dead gorgeous girl like me around. I couldn't help but grin. Still, you do have good taste. I admit I'm kind of handsome, but next time, maybe keep it a little low-key. Voting me as class heartthrob in front of the whole class wasn't exactly subtle. Why are you walking so fast? Wait up! As I spoke, I noticed Gu Kingen had already picked up his pace and walked ahead. You must be seriously overestimating your looks. I thought they were voting for the ugliest guy, that's why I picked you. Gu Kingen waited for me to catch up just so he could say that on purpose. But I acted like I hadn't heard him, and suddenly asked, want some ice cream? Come on, big bro's buying you ice cream. Gu Kingen was completely thrown off by my sudden change of topic, and hadn't even processed what I said yet. I dragged him along toward the convenience store. I grabbed my favorite vanilla flavor. And for Gu Kingen, I picked out the strawberry he liked. Then I ran down to the little garden swing below our building and plopped myself down on it. It was late afternoon. The perfect hour when kids gathered in groups to play outside. Just at the end of the month, a little boy around 4 or 5 showed up just a bit too late. He didn't get a swing and could only stand nearby, eyes glued to it longingly. Gu Kingen looked on, visibly embarrassed for me. He nudged me and whispered, Zhang Haoqi, get off that swing already. You're really gonna fight a little kid for a turn. Aren't you ashamed? I looked up at Gu Kingen and shamelessly said, what's there to be ashamed of? Everything's first come, first served, right? Then I turned to the little boy and asked, Lele, don't you think I'm handsome? The boy immediately raised his head proudly and said in his soft little voice, How Jeej is the most handsome. He's the most handsome big brother in the whole world. I smiled in satisfaction and said, then push me for one more minute. After that, I'll let you have the swing. How about that? Okay, it's a deal. With that, the little boy went around to the back and started pushing the swing for me. Gu Kingen looked like he wished he could vanish into thin air. If the boy's parents saw this, they'd definitely think we were bullying their kid. Lele, right. Step back a little. Let big sister help you push, okay? Even though Gu Kingen was usually aloof, he still had a soft spot for children. But the boy flat out refused his offer. No, I can do it myself. I don't need your help. This little guy really didn't know how to accept kindness. What a stubborn one. So Gu Kingen leaned against the nearby pull-up bar, eating his ice cream, while watching the boy push the swing. Alright, Lele. It's your turn now. A minute later, I finally got off the swing and patted the dust off my pants as I walked away. You really are something. Even little kids aren't safe from your bullying. Maybe he was reminded of all the years I tortured him growing up. Gu Kingen couldn't help but speak up for Lele, but I didn't respond to his jab. Instead, I asked with a grin, Gu Kingen, do you remember that one time when we were kids? You finished your ice cream and tried to steal mine. I got so mad I started crying. You were afraid of your parents scolding you. So just like Lele, you pushed me on the swing to make it up. Of course I remember I pushed forever and you still weren't happy. So I kept pushing and pushing. My arms were so sore the next day I couldn't even lift them. Hey ha ha ha. We both burst into laughter as we talked. Those were the days. Every day carefree and light, without a single worrying. I suddenly felt a strange sense of melancholy, though I couldn't quite tell why. Maybe it's just part of growing up. In 1 year, we'd be taking the college entrance exams. The pressure was piling up, and with it came an uncertain hope for the future. In the past, I used to think the rest of my life would go on just like before, living with my parents, playing with Gu Kingen. I always believed, without question, that Gu Kingen and I were each other's most important friend. But lately, I've started to realize that the world is so much bigger than I ever imagined. Just then, my mom walked into my room and yanked the curtains open all at once. Haochi, didn't you say you were going to a classmate's to study? Do you know what time it is? Why aren't you up yet? Sunlight streamed in through the window, landing right on my face. What time is it, Mom? I mumbled and squirmed around a bit, then yanked the blanket high over my head and drifted back to sleep. Shenbing pulled me out from under the covers. It's already 8:30 and you're still not up. Get up, hurry, and get ready. With my hair a complete mess, I stumbled past. When I got to the living room, Yu Gong suddenly spotted a beautiful figure sitting on the sofa. I focused my gaze. It was Gu Kingen. Morning, lazy pig. Gu Kingen swallowed the sandwich in his mouth, tilted his head, and greeted me. I've been waiting for you for 13 minutes and 14 seconds. Just shut up and eat your breakfast. Take this with you later and share it with your friends. Mom brought out the containers from the kitchen and stuffed them into my backpack. They were filled with neatly cut fruits, while still complaining that her son only knew how to eat. Hurry up and go wash up. Look at how messy you look. Who would ever dare marry you in the future? She'd really be down on her luck. Gu Kingen nearly choked on his milk from laughing. I turned and headed to the bathroom. The next second, I was startled by the sight of myself in the mirror. My hair looked like it had been struck by lightning last night, and there were still traces of drool at the corner of my mouth. A storm of scrubbing sounds erupted in the bathroom. 10 minutes later, a refreshed and handsome version of me emerged again. Mom, we're heading out. I slung on my backpack, grabbed a sandwich from the table, and pulled Gu Kingen out the door with me. Be safe on the road. Come back early. Mom's voice trailed behind the sound of the closing door, fading from the other side. It took about 20 minutes to get to Kek's place. As we were about to arrive, Goji messaged me asking where I was. Since he had just gotten off the bus too, he was waiting at the stop so we could go in together. Gu Kingin, you're here. Then let's go in now. Because Gu Kingin wouldn't respond to anyone. Goji had already been bombarded by messages from Su Kik on WeChat. The security guard at the complex wouldn't let them in no matter what. Not until they called Su Kik did he finally feel reassured. I'd heard before that Su Kik was a rich kid, but I didn't expect her neighborhood to be this grand. The moment we stepped inside, Su Kik gave us a tour of her house. It was clean and orderly inside. The decor wasn't luxurious, but rather simple and tasteful. When I, Goji, and Su Kik got together, we could chat endlessly. Only Gu Kingin kept a clear head. He still remembered we were here to study today. Now that the house tour's over, isn't it time to study? He finally spoke up. When I glanced at the time and saw it was almost 10, the four of us quickly sat down at the dining table. I sat with Goji on one side, while Gu Kingin and Su Kik sat on the other. Since the mock exams were coming up next week, there was no homework this weekend. We were just supposed to review on our own. My class was known as the overachiever class. We all chose the traditional science stream, physics, chemistry, and biology, but Goji suggested each of us should be in charge of the subject we're best at. That way, we can review more efficiently. I'm best at physics and biology, and my weakest subject is Chinese, especially classical Chinese. I immediately said I'm strongest in math and chemistry, but I'm terrible at English. Just saying the word English gives me a headache. Su Kik chimed in right after. What a coincidence, Goji. I'm the complete opposite of you. I'm really good at Chinese, but my English is a bit weak. After she finished, the three of us all turned to look at Gu Kingin. Gu Kingin spread his hands helplessly and calmly said, I can't answer that question because I'm good at all of them. The three of us rolled our eyes in unison in our heads, but none of us could argue with him. This guy was way too full of himself. But to be fair, Gu Kingin really was a top student. He'd stayed in the top 3 all 3 years of high school, never once slipping from his throne. Goji wrapped things up and said with a smile, all right, let's go with that. Since I'm good at it, I'll be in charge of reviewing math with everyone. I'll also take care of physics. Su Kik will handle Chinese. As for Gu Kingin, the capable should take on more, so he'll cover all the other science subjects. How about it if there are no objections? Then let's get started quickly. Su Kik glanced at me and said, how about we start with math while our minds are still fresh? I hesitantly handed the math textbook to Gu Kingin. Gu Kingin took the book and immediately began flipping through it from the very first page. His pen moved swiftly as he circled the key points. A minute later, he handed the book and notebook to the rest of us. If you can grasp all the key points I've marked, then scoring above 100 shouldn't be a problem. I glanced at it and couldn't help frowning. With this level, and he still thinks he can compete with me. Su Kik looked at me in surprise and said, wait, are you seriously trying to compete with Gu Kingin? After all these years of studying, it was the first time Su Kik had seen someone treat Gu Kingin as a rival. I waved my hand and said, yes, I'm definitely competing with him. Then I picked up a pen and began writing furiously on a sheet of paper. Once I finished, I placed the paper in the center of the table. These 5 questions I created are based on key and difficult points so you can give them a try. Gu Kingin glanced over the questions. His beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, as if he was intrigued. Su Kik stared at the questions and exclaimed, these are really tricky, Haochi. Just how many knowledge points did you combine into these? She raised her thumb and gave me a huge thumbs up. The 3 of them then lowered their heads and started solving the problems. But after 20 minutes, none of them had managed to solve all the questions completely. Especially Gu Kingin. He was stuck on the final question for a long time and still couldn't work it out. I picked up their answer sheets and examined them for a bit, then nodded and said, Not bad, actually, even if you can't fully solve them. Writing down the correct formulas can still earn you a few points. After that, I pulled out a blank sheet of scratch paper and began explaining the solutions step by step. Sukik and Goji listened with mouths agape, nodding along as they absorbed every word. By the time I finished explaining, it was like their energy channels had been unblocked. They looked completely enlightened. Sukik reached out to pat my head, but I dodged nimbly. He let out a sigh of admiration and said, "Damn, who knew math problems could be this simple? What in the world is going on inside that head of yours?" Then he was immediately silenced by a death stare from Gukingen. I noticed Goji slumping over the desk, utterly dejected. So I couldn't help but ask with concern, "What's wrong? Why do you look so drained?" He looked like he'd just been tortured by math. His lips jutted out dramatically. "Math is just too hard." "It really is," I said comfortingly. Then I suddenly remembered the fruit in my backpack and perked up instantly. Break time! Let's eat some fruit before continuing. Sukik checked the time. It was nearly noon. "What do you all want for lunch?" "I'll cook for you." As soon as those words left her mouth, we were all stunned. My eyes widened in disbelief. "You can cook!" Sukik proudly rolled up her sleeves and said, "Of course I can. Just wait, I'll show you what I've got." None of us held back. We watched as Sukik moved fluidly around the kitchen, chopping and cooking in one seamless motion. Her skilled technique made both Goji and me exclaim. We never expected Sukik to have this side to her. Suddenly, I felt a chill down my spine. It was the resentful gaze of Gukingen from behind me. Before long, the food was ready. Sukik brought out for plates and served the rice. Then she scooped the curry beef from the pot and poured it over the rice. There was both meat and vegetables. A perfectly balanced meal with a beautiful appearance, aroma, and taste. Alright, please enjoy it, everyone. The aroma seemed to grow tiny hands that tugged at both Goji's and my stomachs, making them rumble. Goji took a bite. "This is absolutely delicious." He rarely sounded this excited. I shoveled big mouthfuls into my mouth and couldn't help but praise her. "I didn't expect this at all. Sukik, I can't believe you're such a good cook." Sukik finally felt validated by the two of us. She smirked proudly at Gukingen, even raised an eyebrow. "Well, when it comes to cooking, I'm clearly better than you." "It's just cooking," I replied for Gukingen, full of disdain. I nearly sprayed a mouthful of curry in his face and couldn't help roasting him. "Gukingen, seriously. The last time I ate your boiled noodles, I had diarrhea for a whole day and night." Sukik and Goji tried their best to hold back laughter. Their shoulders were shaking from the effort. We decided who would wash the dishes with a game of rock, paper, scissors. Heaven is truly fair. Gukingen is unbeatable when it comes to skill. But when it comes to games, he's always incredibly unlucky, especially when I'm around. By the time Gukingen finished washing the dishes, Goji and I were already napping at the table. It was the perfect time for a midday nap, with the sunlight streaming through the window beside us, shining on my face. Gukingen quietly moved a chair over and sat beside me. He picked up a notebook from the table and tilted it in front of me to block the sunlight from my face, and he held it there for quite a while. He even rolled his stiff shoulder slowly. Looking up, he met Goji's gaze, who was watching him with a faint smile. He lifted his hand and made a gesture at the tip of his nose. It was the first time Goji realized that the cold and proud school heartthrob could be this gentle. Goji made an okay sign with his hand, then turned his head and knowingly closed his eyes again. Some time later, Sukik and Liu Wenghui came back. She called out from the door, "I'm back." The moment Gukingen heard her voice, he pulled his hand back, and she ended up waking both Goji and me. I rubbed my eyes and sleepily asked, "Gukingen, what are you doing sitting there?" Without answering, he quickly picked up the chair and returned to his seat. I was sitting here to get a better view of your drooling. Look, you drooled all over the table. I hurriedly wiped my mouth and checked the table again. I didn't drool at all. Thankfully, Goji helped smooth things over for Gukingen. Alright, let's get back to it. I just spent the whole afternoon summarizing the main techniques for scoring in physics. You guys can take a look, it might help. The day passed quickly, and before we knew it, it was time to head home. With 4 academic elites together, our efficiency soared. We helped each other, making up for one another's weaknesses. In just one day, we'd basically finished reviewing. I had just gotten up early, then crawled into bed, ready to sleep, when my phone rang. I picked it up and saw a message from our Top for Study Kings group chat. That name was something Sukik insisted on, because she felt being a Salt King was more satisfying than just being a study king. Goji sent a message, wishing everyone good luck on tomorrow's exam. May we all get great results. Then the beautiful Kik chimed in, cheering us on with let's go, and also sent early blessings to Gukingen. I replied too. Good night, everyone. Let's go. Only Gukingen remained silent. Maybe he was already asleep. I waited a bit, figuring he probably wasn't going to reply. So I set my phone aside in the dark. Just as I was about to sleep and closed my eyes, the phone rang again. I sprang up and checked my phone. It was a private message from Gukingen. Good luck tomorrow, with a smiling emoji. The screen lit up my face, and the corners of my lips curved into the same smile as the one in the emoji. Similarly, the exam at Huyizhang was arranged by performance-based seating. Gukingen naturally ended up in the first seat of the first exam room, while I, a transfer student with a history grade of 0, was assigned to the last seat in the last exam room. The two of us, once inseparable, suddenly became the head and the tail of the exam rankings. The boys from other classes in this exam room always looked forward to exam week, because only during this time could they experience what it felt like to be in the same class as Gukingen. If they were lucky, they might even exchange a word or two with him. When Gukingen walked in, a wave of excitement rippled through the classroom, just as expected. He's here. Gukingen is here. Before he even arrived, there were already several bottles of drinks placed on his desk, with little notes stuck to the bottles, wishing him good luck on the exam. Gukingen picked up a bottle and glanced at it, then waited for the invigilator to arrive, and handed it over to the teacher on the podium. Please have some water. The invigilator was a stern middle-aged man, with thinning hair on top of his head. He immediately guessed the water was given to Gukingen by other students. He frowned slightly and spoke to everyone. Some boys don't study properly. They spend their days bringing others tea and water. Next time, don't waste your time on this nonsense. Put a little more effort into studying, okay? Meanwhile, my arrival at the last exam room also sparked quite a bit of chatter. Zhang Hao is seriously good looking. Obviously, anyone who can make the grade school heartthrob Gukingen take notice can't be just an ordinary person. I pretended I didn't hear a thing and made my way through the crowd to my seat. My seat was in the farthest corner of the entire exam room, right behind the lowest ranked student in the grade. I was actually quite satisfied with that spot. Low-key enough, since being at the bottom is often just as famous as being at the top. A real school celebrity. And what do you know? That person turned out to be someone I knew. Wenyan spotted me from afar and came over to say hello. He sat upright there, tall and slender, with a confident air about him. If you didn't know him, just by appearance alone, you'd never guess he was a total academic disaster. I ignored him and walked straight to my seat. The moment I sat down, Yang Xinyu turned her head and asked me, "Hey, I called you, why didn't you answer?" I looked at her, a bit speechless. If you're planning to ask if you can copy off me later, then don't bother wasting your breath. I don't cheat. Wenyan gave a short laugh. Sometimes you're a lot like Gu Kingen, just a little full of yourself. When did I ever say I wanted to copy from you? I never cheat, alright. Wenyan, I nodded and said, fair point. If you did cheat, you wouldn't be ranked last. As the bell rang, the exam officially began. Gu Kingen finished the test over half an hour early. But since we couldn't turn it in early, he lay on the desk, taking a nap. The rest of the class had mostly finished too, and sat quietly in their seats. But in my exam room, things didn't stay quiet for long. Aside from a few who were genuinely determined to improve, the rest began whispering. Someone was even humming and mumbling. Others tapped on their desks or played with their pens. I let out a sigh. I hadn't even started on my essay yet. I was completely annoyed by the noise. Yang Xinyu suddenly shouted, not too loudly or softly. We're taking an exam, can we be quiet? It startled everyone in the room, including the invigilating teacher. Back in the day, when the classroom got noisy during exams, Liang Xinyu was always part of the chaos too. He never behaved himself during any exam, but now he was actually trying to maintain order. Maybe the noise was disturbing his nap. Still, that shout turned out to be pretty effective. The classroom quickly quieted down, and it stayed that way for the rest of the exams. When the final bell rang, the last person in each row had to get up to collect the papers. As I gathered Yang Xinyu's paper, I noticed the entire essay page was blank, which meant he hadn't written anything at all. That struck me as odd. Even writing a few words would have gotten him at least 1 point. I couldn't tell if he was too lazy or if he did it on purpose. Alright, you may all leave now. Once the invigilator gave the word, Gu Kingen was the first to leave the exam room. Someone called his name from behind. It was a voice Gu Kingen knew all too well. It was Song Jinian. Gu Kingen pretended not to hear and kept walking forward. But Song Jinian caught up. Grinning as she asked, how was your test? Gu Kingen replied coolly, not bad, and leaned away, ready to leave. But Song Jinian wouldn't give up and pressed on. This afternoon is math. Did you predict any questions? I heard you always manage to guess the test topics before each exam. Gu Kingen was starting to lose his patience. She was like chewing gum stuck to his shoe, impossible to shake off. Just as he was about to snap, Suke popped up from behind and said, predictions. I've got them. Great Lord Sue, would you like to hear them? He shouted those words toward Gu Kingen like a charm, and Gu Kingen quickly took the chance to slip away. I finished collecting the papers and returned to my seat, slowly packing up my things, when suddenly the room grew noticeably noisy. Everyone turned and looked toward the door. Isn't that Gu Kingen? What's he doing here? Could he be looking for someone? But who would he come here to find? Looks like your brain fried during the test. Sure enough, Gu Kingen knocked on the classroom door and shouted toward the last row, plus sign. Hurry up! His eyes swept past the front row and landed on Liang Xinyu's face. Gu Kingen's frown was obvious. I quickly walked up to him and asked, what are you doing here? If I remember correctly, the first exam room is down the hall upstairs. There's no reason for you to pass by here on your way back. Gu Kingen coldly replied with a half-baked excuse, geez, why do you ask so many questions? Then he quickly changed the subject, walking as he asked, so, how are you adjusting to this exam room? I waved a hand and said, at first it was tough, way too noisy, but later, I suddenly remembered Yang Xinyu's blank essay page, and couldn't help asking, do you know that Yang Xinyu? What kind of person is he? Gu Kingen had heard me mention girls' names before, but this time it felt different to him. Something about it made him pause. He asked warily, why are you suddenly asking about him? Did he say something to you? I looked at Gukingen and said, nothing really. I was just curious. Did you know? He didn't write a single word for the essay. I seriously suspect he does it on purpose, always landing in last place every time. Gukingen suddenly stopped walking and said flatly, so what? It's always the same story. Some drama with the family, so he tanks his grades on purpose. Anyway, I'm warning you, stay away from him. I sneered. Who are you to control me? Because I'm Jiangsu Shenye. He said he was temporarily taking over as my guardian at school. Gukingen said that, and instantly puffed himself up like he was 10 feet tall. Everyone we passed along the way covered their mouths, trying not to laugh, but Gukingen and I had long grown used to being the center of attention, chatting as we walked, completely indifferent to the stares that followed us. As soon as Sukik saw us, she rushed over and shouted, "You're finally back." Guoji's been waiting at the cafeteria door with the meal card for ages. Come on, let's eat. I'm starving. The 4 top students reunited once again in the cafeteria. While we ate, I suddenly remembered a key topic that might be on the exam, and casually brought it up at the table. After the math test, the 3 of them cornered me and showered me with praise. Sukik said excitedly, John Haochi, it's all thanks to you helping us review the data. I think I might actually score 10 points higher than last time. Guo, yeah. Twisted open the ice-cold cola he just bought from the school store and held it out to me. Haochi, I swear you're a genius. The topic you mentioned at lunch was perfect for the final big question. I glanced sideways at him and said, all that's worth is 1 drink. When Yen cut in immediately and said, no way, we'll treat you to a meal. Come on, Master Haochi, tell us what you want to eat. Anyone who hears this offer gets a share. Sukik raised her hand and said, I vote for hot pot. Guo Ya seconded it. I vote for hot pot too. Then Sukik looked at Gukingen and saw him nod. So she declared, it's settled then. Hot pot for everyone this weekend. It's a promise. The 3D mock exam ended quickly. That last afternoon, everyone relaxed just a little. And then the long, anxious wait began. The wait for the results. Kingen turned around and looked at me saying, so, how confident are you about beating me? I tried to act tough and said, not very. Just about 99,999% sure. But truth be told, ever since a few days ago, after seeing how strong Gukingen really was, I started to regret it. Why did I act on impulse back then and make such a reckless bet? But I told myself I couldn't back down. Gukingen smiled faintly and said, then I'll be waiting. Everyone was still chattering and teasing each other when our homeroom teacher, Old Zhang, walked in and cleared his throat. Alright, I know the exam's been tough on everyone these past few days. This afternoon's self-study is cancelled. We're all going out to the playground. The classroom erupted in cheers. Finally, some free time. And for the boys, the obvious choice was basketball. Whether it was the court or the field, they were always packed. Whoa, yeah, and I headed straight for the courts. Come on, let's go. Let's go watch Zhang Haochi play. 2 girls from the front rows shouted as they rushed out the door. Kingen, should we go watch too? Sukik saw the other girls in class heading out to watch us play basketball and couldn't resist joining the fun. Even though Gukingen and I grew up together, he had almost never seen me play basketball. Back in elementary school, I was just a little guy, mostly playing dodgeball with them instead. Sure, let's go then. I'm curious to see how good he really is. I walked arm in arm with Sukik toward the playground. Come on, Kingen. If you're going to watch, pick up the pace. Sukik tugged Gukingen and hurried out of the classroom. Wait a second, this isn't the way to the playground. We should be turning right after going down the stairs. But Sukik was pulling him to the left. Gukingen couldn't help but be puzzled. Isn't this the way to the school store? Are you dumb? It's boiling out here. If you're going to watch Jong Ho-chi play basketball, shouldn't you at least bring him a bottle of water? Sukik looked like she was completely exasperated with her. She muttered that she really didn't know what to do with this aloof little niece of hers, Gu Kingan. I don't need to, do I? There must be plenty of girls already bringing him water. He won't miss mine. How could he not miss it? Besides, whether he needs it or not is his business. Whether you bring it or not is yours. Sukik took her role as matchmaker very seriously and with great dedication. Gu Kingan suddenly narrowed her eyes and questioned her. Kik, don't tell me you like Jong Ho-chi too. Are you also bringing him water? Sukik nearly fainted from anger. What are you even talking about? I definitely don't like Jong Ho-chi. Gu Kingan gasped in surprise. So if it's not for Jong Ho-chi, then don't tell me it's for Guo Ya. Sukik was blushing with both shame and frustration. I'm not looking at anyone. Are you coming or not? When Gu Kingan and Sukik walked into the gym, they were greeted by waves of cheers, mixed with the rhythmic thud of the basketball hitting the hoop. Inside the gym was no cooler than outside. Just standing at the entrance, you could already smell the sweat of youth in the air. Gu Kingan wrinkled her nose. So many people crammed in here watching. What's even worth seeing? The truth is, most of the girls probably didn't understand Euro steps or fakeouts. They couldn't tell a fadeaway from a jump shot. They were just here to admire the handsome guys. Gu Kingan spotted me on the court right away, just in time to see me sink a three-pointer. I lined it up and shot in one smooth motion. My movements were fluid and precise, sparking a wave of high-pitched screams from the girls below. Gu Kingan and Sukik slowly made their way toward the front row. I noticed them at just the right moment and gave a small smile in their direction. That single smile made the crowd even louder. This new transfer student is so handsome. I'm totally crushing on him now. But Gu Kingan didn't hear a single word of it. She just watched me on the court, bright and full of life. So full of youthful energy. One smile was enough to make all the girls scream. It hadn't even been long since I transferred, and already I was so popular. Gu Kingan muttered something under her breath. Just then, I walked over, waving a hand in front of his face. Hey, what are you thinking about? Were you dazzled by how well I played? Gu Kingan snapped out of his thoughts. Mid-game break already. He stood there dumbfounded for a second. I casually reached out and took the drink from his hand. This is for me, right? Thanks, but next time get me the lime flavor. I don't like peach. Only then did Gu Kingan realize that the crowd pressing in around him had completely disappeared. If you don't like it, don't drink it. There are plenty of girls waiting to give you water anyway. Whoa, yeah, and I chugged a few big gulps, finishing half the bottle. Then we each handed the remaining drinks back to Gu Kingan and Sukik before heading back to the court. Just as I got back into the game, I heard Sukik's voice, excitedly describing what had just happened to Gu Kingan. Hey, Kingan, you didn't see how Jong Ho-chi just turned down girl after girl who tried to run over and hand him water. He walked straight to you. It was seriously the sweetest thing ever. How could you miss that? Well, I don't really understand basketball anyway. I was just thinking about that chemistry question on the exam. Even Gu Kingan didn't know why he lied. Maybe it was because he never expected to one day be the one swooning over Jong Ho-chi. Sukik shook her head, mumbling. Top student Gu can't stop thinking about school even for a second. No wonder he's always ranked first. You'd never guess that the usually cold and aloof Gu Kingan was acting a little strange today. I finally snapped out of it and asked him what he had just said. Sukik just shook his head. He gave him a glare and said he wasn't stupid, just that studying had made him silly. Gu Ching called out to me, but I had no mood to argue with him. I turned my eyes back to the court. Sending someone to play basketball was actually quite entertaining, and as expected, the final result was My team won by a large margin. Off the court, the crowd showed no signs of tiring. Their cheers echoed on without end. This time, Gu Qing didn't get distracted. When I walked over, he handed me the drink from his arms right on time. I was surprised for a second, then smiled and reached out to take it. In that moment, the sweat on my forehead seemed to bloom like flowers in his eyes. Even the smell of sweat in the gym turned sweet. I softly said to Gu Qing, "Hi, let's go. Let's tidy up and head home." The words that slipped from my mouth felt somehow different, yet at the same time, nothing had changed. This was a sentence I had heard countless times before, and now it echoed endlessly in Gu Qinghai's mind. "What's wrong, Qinghai? Why is your face so red? Is it too stuffy in the gym?" On the way back to the classroom, Sukik noticed Gu Qinghan suddenly stopped talking. His cheeks were slightly flushed. She thought he might be having heat stroke. "It's nothing, really nothing." Gu Qinghan quickly shook his head, then nervously jogged a few steps with energy, trying to prove that he was perfectly fine. Whenever I saw Gu Qinghan, everything went back to how it used to be, cold and distant once again. On the way home, I looked at Gu Qing, Han as he devoured his chicken burger without a care in the world. I couldn't help but want to applaud him. Don't you even try to maintain your image when joking around. Why should I care about my image in front of you? Gu Qinghan glanced around, then answered without hesitation. "True enough, are you still having dinner later?" "Of course I am." Seeing the worried look on my face, Gu Qinghan thought I was afraid he would steal my food. "Relax. I'm not going to your house to freeload today." These past couple days, some people were living in fear, afraid that when the results came out, they'd be forced to quit again. But others were full of hope, wanting to see if their hard work had paid off. Every time a teacher came in, I stretched my neck to look, thinking the results were about to be announced. Just like that, we held on until Friday. Before the first class in the afternoon, I came back from the restroom and saw Gu Qinghan's seat was still empty. The bell had rung, but he still hadn't returned. 10 more minutes passed, and there was still no sign of him. I turned and asked Sister Guo, "Where's Gu Qinghan? Where did he go?" She guessed that he went to help the teacher tally the scores. They wanted to get the results out before the weekend. He, the class monitor, and Song Ji were all helping the teacher calculate the grades. In the office, teachers from all subjects were furiously grading papers with passion. Usually they left the last exam room's papers for the end, because that room had the most unpredictable answers and was the hardest to grade. Old Zhang held his red pen and angrily drew an X, fuming. "What the heck is this kid writing? It's completely off topic." The biology teacher could only shake his head helplessly. He chuckled and said, "Just look at this one." On the paper it said, "Teacher, I beg you, please give me a few points. I really don't know this one." He even tried to act cute with me. The math teacher smiled with satisfaction and said, "Hey, now this one here is real talent." He drew big, bold checks as he graded, nodding with each mark. The handwriting was neat. The logic was clear. This score must be from exam room 1. I've got to see who this is later. Gu Qinghan stood quietly at the side, listening. I didn't know why, but I felt a little proud inside. He let out a soft chuckle. Our classical Chinese teacher, Old Zhang, quickly spoke up. "Who else could it be? We just moved here, didn't we, and only recently transferred." He was in the last exam room. At that moment, Old Zhang looked even prouder than Gu Qinghan. No matter how much he scolded the students in class, no matter how angry he looked, once we stepped outside the classroom, we were all his good kids. Besides, I usually behaved quite well. I had never caused any trouble. And this time, I had even earned some face for Old Zhang. When Gu Qinghan and the others were calculating the scores, the exam papers were still sealed. But whether sealed or not, it didn't really make a difference to Gu Qinghan. Gu Qinghan wrote my math score on the paper, then gave a satisfied nod. as if he had gotten the score himself. Meanwhile, I anxiously endured to self-study periods. After that, I finally saw Gu Kingen and old Zhang arrive. The class rep and Gu Kingen helped old Zhang place stack after stack of papers onto the teacher's desk. Once they finished, they returned to their seats. Only then did old Zhang begin to speak slowly. Everyone, put your pens down. The results of the mock exam are out. We'll begin distributing the papers now. Even though I knew I hadn't done badly, I was still a little nervous. My palms were slightly sweaty, especially when Gu Kingen walked back and gave me a smile with an unclear meaning that only made me more uneasy inside. Old Zhang pushed his black and gold glasses up his nose with one hand, his expression slightly serious. Let me first talk about the overall situation. Through this mock exam, I noticed many students still lacked a sense of urgency. Sensing that the mood had shifted, the students all looked down at their desks, afraid of accidentally making eye contact with old Zhang and getting called out for criticism. Old Zhang raised his other hand and flicked the grade sheet a few times, then continued summarizing this exam. Everyone's overall performance remained quite good. Some students made great improvements. Now, I'll especially commend the following students. I hope everyone can learn from them. As he spoke, he picked up a paper and began reading names. Sukik 612 points. Guo Ya 655 points. When Sukik and Guo Ya heard their scores, they cheerfully stepped forward to collect their papers. Old Zhang continued reading on. Song Jingnian 686 points. A soft, crackling buzz of discussion filled the room below the platform. That's seriously impressive. This time the exam was really hard. Even with harder questions, he scored higher than last time. With admiration from his classmates, Song Jingnian stood up and stepped forward to collect his paper. Though he looked calm on the surface, as he passed by me, he suddenly shot me a smug glance and even flicked his test paper with his fingers. Finally, old Zhang held up the last to test papers, his face brimming with pride. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. This time, two students in our class scored over 700. Hearing that, the class began whispering among themselves. Even the class rep didn't score over 700 this time, so one of them must be Gu Kingen. Then who's the other one? Suddenly someone seemed to realize something and grew visibly excited, grabbing the people around them to whisper in hushed voices. Old Zhang knocked on the desk, signaling everyone to quiet down. Then he announced Zhang, "Hey Oshi, 708 points." The class erupted in discussion once again. It grew louder. Several girls excitedly shook the arms of the classmates next to them, giggling and whispering. And when Song Jingnian confirmed he hadn't misheard, a light blush crept over his face. As for me, I slowly rose from my seat and walked forward to receive my test paper, glancing once more at the final paper still on the desk, then turned with a smile and looked at Gu Kingen. Only then did I return to my seat. Old Zhang began reading out the very last paper in his hand. Gu Kingen,